Hello and welcome to a special little video taking a look at the winners of our 2021 Spring Mod Jam. For those of you who, missed out on the competition, this was a 48-hour long event where modders had to come up with, design, and release a mod over the course of a single weekend. There were about 19 mods released for this particular Mod Jam, the most so far in a Mod Jam style event, and we'll be taking a look at the winners and the Player's Choice nominee just here today. But first, I would really like to thank Danae for basically doing all the work to organize and host this year's Spring Mod Jam. Without her tireless efforts, this event simply wouldn't have happened, and certainly we wouldn't have gotten the results back quite so quickly and efficiently. She's also gone through and looked at all 19 mods on her live stream, a link to which you'll just find down below. We'll have our own showcase of the other 15 mods for the Mod Jam out sometime next week on, I think, April 24th, though we might need to split that into 2 videos. I don't know. But with all that out of the way, down links and timestamps are just down below, and let's just get started. Our winning mod from the 2021 Spring Mod Jam is The Blight by Greatness7 and Operator Jack, with contributions from Leowin. Now this is a rather impressive mod, given it was made in a single weekend, that effectively overhauls and expands how blight diseases just work, how they appear, and how, social interactions like during blight storms or with people with the blight, occur. Probably the most easily visible element of this mod is the new visual effects. Those who contract the blight, whether they're NPCs or the player, will now have a visible blight effect, applied to them, and only removed when they've been cured. There's also a risk of active transmission of the blight. Being in close contact with infected NPCs, or even potentially objects or plants, it could result in getting infected with the blight disease. And the player could also act as a vector towards, infecting others, passing the blight on. This impact is even greater due to the blight storms, which now carry the risk of spreading the blight to those just outside during the storm. And the risk of catching blight from a blight storm is just higher the closer you get to a red mountain. Wearing facial protection, like masks, will reduce the risk of spreading or contracting the blight, especially during blight storms. And NPCs will just, equip their own face protection during storms. Though this won't completely, eliminate the risk of catching the blight here, and just as an immersive bonus, services offered outside will obviously be restricted during a blight storm, and this will in particular, affect travel services. No one wants to travel out in the middle of a blight storm. With so many features and such an immersive new take on blight disease, it's easy to see why the judges were won over by this mod and why it won the Mod Jam. It's a fantastic addition to add to your game, and one that will make the game just a bit more difficult and perhaps even just a bit more anxiety-inducing for when, a blight storm comes roaring in and you're still just far away from shelter. I would certainly highly recommend, checking it out, but anyway, moving on, we have our second place winner, which is Redoran Exile Armor by Ruffin Vangar, and as you might expect from the name here, this mod adds a new set of armor to the game, which you can find on the body of just an exiled Redoran warrior in an ancestral tomb outside of Outrun, and honestly, this is just a pretty fantastic set of Redoran armor with a unique visual style that just perfectly fits in with Morrowind's alien aesthetic and, complements House Redoran fairly well here. Beyond the armor, though, I do think it's also worth, mentioning the lore and backstory that Ruffin Vangar has created for this armor, on the mod download page. The Redoran exiles, those expelled from House Redoran for good, but whose loyalty to the house is so strong that they'll seek redemption and honor in the wilds, living as wastelanders and protecting Redoran settlements by just hunting down hostile creatures and pacifying ancestral tombs of frenzied spirits. And notably, these exiles stick scrolls of parchment to their armor, the final messages of family and friends before going into exile, and knowing that they'll probably just never see them again. To say the least, this is a really cool bit of lore, and one that naturally fits in with the, the culture of House Redoran and, Morrowind. But anyway, all that was just enough to make this our second place winner in the mod jam, and it's definitely a great mod to check out here. Finally, for third place, we have Lost Redoran Relics by Billy Fighter, a dungeon, a quest, and new items mod. This one just packs quite a bit of content for such a short competition. Again, these mods were made in only about 48 hours, but anyway, to begin with, this mod adds a new, just a cavern northwest of Aldrun, a collapsed tunnel that leads down to an ancient buried Redoran settlement. If you're a member of House Redoran, you'll be able to start a quest to just uncover some lost relics to be found somewhere in the dark caverns below. But you'll need to be careful, as these caverns are just full of angry spirits ready to attack any living soul who dares to enter their realm. Now, surprisingly, given the time limits for the mod jam, this is actually a pretty decent-sized dungeon. I'd say about mid-size, and actually quite a bit bigger than even a lot of the vanilla dungeons, though it's a bit dark, so, I'll have to apologize for the poor visibility in the video here. Anyway, these are just some pretty neat fungal caverns for you to delve through, for these interesting red glowing mushrooms, which you can of course, harvest, by the way. And eventually you'll come across the outskirts of this ruined settlement, where you can begin, searching for lost relics and buried treasures and whatnot. But of course, I don't want to spoil the entire dungeon, so let's just skip ahead and show off some of the new weapons and armor that you can find in this mod. Because this mod does add a new retextured set of Redoran armor and a new spear for you to find, which both just look pretty great, I think, and, really there's just a lot of content here. This one is just a lot of fun, and I would highly recommend it, but anyway, at last we have the Player's Choice Award, which goes to the Beacon of Saint Realms by Marquand. A rather suitable choice for the Player's Choice Award, seeing as this is the only mod from the mod jam to truly embrace verticality. Though Lost Redoran Relics does get points for a certain bit of dungeon design, but in any event, this mod adds a new sanctuary and beacon along the mountainous path between Aldrun and Ghost Gate, where pilgrims can rest before, making the rest of their journey to Ghost Gate. Set in the hills here, you can see the beacon of St. Realms just 4 miles around, a watchtower clearly visible from Aldrun itself, giving you a new landmark on the, on the horizon when you're out in the Ashlands. It's really quite the scenic addition, especially when you're heading towards it during the early morning hours, offering an epic vista of verticality, and quite appropriately, it does have an actual beacon visible at night from a fair distance off, welcoming the weary and the fatigued to just a place of rest. And going inside, it is a somewhat typical way station, with lots of bedrolls and beds, caretakers to look after those sore from the road, and filled with the occasional pilgrims looking for a bit of respite. It's a fairly nice looking place with a good bit of detailing, a Velothi shrine for the religiously devout, which, given that this is a way station for pilgrims, is probably most everyone who, stops in here, and a bar with plenty of refreshments, and this is just a lovely and beautiful addition to the game, and it's really easy to see why it won the Player's Choice Award, but that's all for now. Tune in next Saturday for a look at just even more mods from the Spring Mod Jam, and as always, down links are just down below, and real quick, I'd like to give a shout out to some of our patrons, including Kiwi, Langastir, Norcascade, Rissalith, Pova Holo, Sokacat, and Telvani with 1,000 nicknames. If you'd like to join them and to support our efforts to highlight the great works of the Morrowind modding community, check out our rewards at patreon.com/morrowindmodding. Thanks for watching, stay safe, stay healthy, happy modding, and I'll see you all next time.